Okay, let's talk reality. It
Okay.
passed sports gambling for Louisiana overwhelmingly passed in both houses of the legislature. Where do we go from here? You can walk us through it. What do you think the chances are? And you can, if you're allowed, I guess, give us a projected date, if at all. What are you thinking?
Well, the authorization for a referendum passed yesterday. And what that means, it'll be on the ballot, much like the fantasy sports referendum was on the ballot a year or so ago.
Well, I had to bring that up, didn't you? Yeah.
Well, when people ask me about sports betting, they go, well, we voted on that already. No, you didn't. You voted on fantasy sports, two different products here. So the vote will be done in the fall. And unless there's a special session between the vote and the regular session, we'll have to wait till the spring session next year to get into the weeds and figure out, what kind of platform will be betting, will sports betting be authorized? Will it be brick and mortar casinos? Will it be mobile? Will it be, truck stops and casinos? So that's when the real, that.
Will it be at Aaron McCarty's house?
Well, but he did,
Yeah.
You did mention mobile. So the possibility of online sports gaming in Louisiana is actually on the table.
Oh, there are some legislators who believe that's the way to go. So there will be a push for it. But I know my sense is many legislators aren't ready for that yet. So I suspect it's going to be brick and mortar facilities, whether it's limited to casinos or brick and mortar video poker licensees and casinos. I just don't know. If last year was any indication, it's going to be a messy fight.
What's your recommendation? I mean, they're going to turn to you. You're the expert.
Well, last year, when legislators asked me, I cautioned them that perhaps they needed to be conservative and not go with mobile yet. Since that time, if one of the reasons for legalizing sports betting is to eliminate the black market, you're not going to do that. You're not going to make any headway at all unless you go with mobile. So if that's the motivation, then let's go full blown. Let's go mobile. But I suspect that's probably not going to be the case. A lot of legislators talk to me individually and say they just have concerns about compulsive gambling. They have concerns about minors, getting on using their daddy's account.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is, they're on line with offshore sports betting platforms anyway.
I had taken it sort of to an extreme when we were talking about this last hour, but it's sort of legit, I guess. Why is Tensaw Parish voting on sports gaming if there's no place in Tensaw Parish for sports gaming?
Well, because if in fact they get enough momentum for mobile sports betting, then you could have mobile sports betting in Tensaw Parish. So otherwise, if it's brick and mortar, unless they have video poker locations there because they don't have any casinos, they wouldn't be able to do it in that parish. But the referendum would have established. Plus, I think there's another reason here. I think by having a referendum, this will give legislators a clear opportunity to vote what their constituents want. In other words, I wouldn't suggest that it gives them political cover, but they'll be able to come back next year and go, look, I ordinarily don't support gaming, but my constituents want this, so I'm going to vote for this sports betting bill now.
Okay, Ronnie Jones, Gaming Control Board Chairman. You know what the industry is. You know the typical standards, etc. I want to go bet, a friend of mine wants to go bet $100 on the Saints. What of that is typically paid in taxes in other places where it's legal? Do I pay the tax? Does the place where I'm betting it pay the tax? How does that work?
No, the tax is paid for by the service provider. For example, in Mississippi, if you go place a bet on the Saints in Mississippi at the Golden Nugget, their tax comes in at about 11 to 12%, and it's the responsibility of the licensee who's taking the bet to pay the tax. And, the taxes range, there are about, I think there's 19 states that have 19 states where sports betting is up and running. Another 6 states have legalized it, but they're not operational yet. And the tax rates run from a low of about 5% in Nevada, where it's been going on since 1949, up to more than 30% in Pennsylvania.
Whoa!
So That's one of the issues they're going to have to nail next year is what's the tax rate going to be.
Which brings us back, which brings us back to our sports fantasy gaming history, which we passed 2 years ago, and for any number of reasons, the Louisiana State Legislature unable to come up with a plan to implement sports gaming, FanDuel, DraftKings, etc.
I think they're closer. I think they're much closer. One of the sports betting bills by the speaker, I think it was Tanner. He had a sports betting bill. They converted it 2 days ago to a fantasy sports bill.
So
fantasy sports is going.
Let me finish the question, then you can take off and run. So my question is, given our legislature's history of being unable to come up with plans for things, how optimistic are you that in these money-grabbing times that we won't be guilty legislatively of the same problem we had with sports gaming and try to overtax?
First of all, let me say, I am not going to criticize the legislators who vote one way or the other. They make the policy, we regulate it. But I do believe there's sufficient momentum that, A, fantasy sports is going to roll out. The bill is going to be approved. I suspect the governor will sign it. Sports betting is going to resoundingly be approved in probably 2/3 to 3/4 of the parishes in November. And in the spring, some form of sports betting will be authorized. I am absolutely optimistic about that, but it is not going to be a cash cow for the state. It's low margin for the properties who offer it. And the projections are 150 to 300 million, perhaps, revenue to the state. I realize that that's still 300 million we don't have, but when legislators ask me how much money is in the game for the state, I explain to them this isn't like a casino; it's an amenity for a casino.
Ronnie, in states where they've legalized it, there's still the under the table gambling. It doesn't eliminate that, right? That's still going to be out there, correct?
In those states that have mobile applications for sports betting, they've just about killed the black. There's always going to be a black market. I mean, it's always going to be there. You're always going to have the barber down the street who'll take a bet, and there's almost no way for the U.S. government to shut down offshore locations. But you reduce the likelihood that a person will go to an offshore location online if they can do it on a mobile application. If you look at the demographics of people who bet on sports, it's people who have their iPhone in their, up in front of their face 90% of the time during the course of the day. Mm-hmm. That's the market. And if you don't make it mobile, a lot of those folks aren't going to go to a property to bet. Some will, but a lot won't, and the black market will continue to thrive.